This is Michael McKeon, aka Morris Fletcher, aka Chuck McGill. You know who I am. But it's time for Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent.
You're watching Inside the Gilliverse, talking all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Also brought to you by Idea Bench, makers of hot rod-inspired pedal boards and pedal board accessories at ideabench.com. Microphones for Inside the Gilliverse are brought to you by Rode Microphones. Now, please welcome your host, Eric Broadbent.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for episode 15 of Inside the Gilliverse, where we talk all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. My name is Eric Broadbent, and it comes with great pleasure to welcome tonight's guest. You know him as writer, director, producer from Better Call Saul, Emmy Award nominee 2020 from this year. I mean, crazy 2020 year. Anyways, he's here. Gordon Smith. How are you, Gordon?
Doing well, Eric. How you doing?
Doing very, very well. It's been nice to have about 5 or 10 minutes with you off air as we kind of get relaxed here and sit back and get ready for some great discussion. But it's a real pleasure to have you here. And as I saw on Twitter tonight from some of our followers and friends, the Gilliverse family, I call them, they really enjoy these writer series. And I'm happy to announce that we have a few coming up. You know, it's been great having Tom as a co-host, as being one of the writers as well, too. And we love this stuff. And I know we're going to have so many, you know, how did you do that questions tonight? And I look forward to it. And I'm sure you don't mind talking shop a little bit.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to do very, very well. Okay, so we got a million questions coming in right off the hop. And I have a few questions for you, but I always like to save mine, put them aside, you know, and then I like to give the fans their shot first. But one of our first questions, it was from Karina. She's a friend of ours, a Gilliverse family member, and she's also a member of our YouTube channel. She says, you've written the best Mike-centric episodes from your first one, 5-0 in season 1, to the brilliant masterpiece episode Bagman in season 5, both Emmy nominated for writing, by the way. Is Mike's "Get Up, I Have People Waiting for Me" speech at the end of Bagman the one that you're most proud of writing for Mike?
I mean, it's tricky because there's, you know, the first speech that I got to, the big speech that I got to write at the end of episode 106 for 5-0, where he's talking about the death of his son, was so pointed and poignant, and it was my, you know, first big encounter with being able to write something like that for an actor of Jonathan Banks' caliber. So it's near and dear to my heart. I do think that the challenge, I feel like in a weird way, the Bagman speech was a little bit more challenging just because we've done some of those speeches before, and finding a nuance and a color that felt new and felt important and felt like, you know what, we haven't actually heard this specific, you know, constellation of thoughts from Mike. You know, a lot of this show is threading the needle, and that felt like threading the needle, you know, very carefully, because we had to, you know, know what we have done and also what happens in Breaking Bad. So I'm proud of both, but that was very challenging to figure out that was going to be a climactic thing in that episode that needed to be just so to kind of move us into the rest of it.
Yeah, and what a great episode with Bagman. I mean, whether you want to see, you know, Jimmy and Mike have some time together over the course of, you know, several episodes, whether you want to see a little bit here or a whole bunch of time, but you certainly got your fill with that episode. You know, whether it wasn't the best circumstances for the two of them, but they got some real bonding time. And just watching, I mean, I love Jimmy and Saul are one of my favorite characters on the show. I love Kim Wexler. You know, I mean, people ask me this question all the time: who's your favorite? And it's so hard, and especially with the roles and the stories that you writers give them. I mean, it's so easy to love them all, even the ones that you hate. You love them because they're such talent. But just watching, you know, the dynamic between the two of them, and Mike being a survivalist. Like I was even telling the boy, look what he's doing there with the water, you know, like, you know, kind of with moss and putting the tarp over it. So there's a little bit of water in the morning, like survivalist, right? You know, just little things like that was so very, very cool.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that we kind of felt paid the proper respect to the character. It felt like something that he would know. We've soldier at some point. He was a cop at some point. It just felt like it would be in his wheelhouse to know something about a solar still. And so that was fun to do and fun to kind of explain to folks, like, all right, this is how this works. And we had to figure out exactly where we could do it, because that's particular setup, that location was an actual location for the daytime. In the daytime sequences, it's all out in the desert, out into Hajli. But then we needed to build for the night. It was completely impractical to shoot the night sequence out there. It's too far out. We would never be able to light it. We'd never be able to get power out there. So we had to build on stage. So when we were blocking where things could be that happened in any relationship to that, Vince had to kind of carefully figure out, like, okay, this needs to happen. This is about how big it needs to be. So, okay, so this can happen here. That won't mess up my shots. That won't make any problems for when we're, if it was too close to where they were doing their night scene, then we would need to build the still on stage as well as out in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to get into that. So it was a challenge.
The soundstage, I mean, I saw a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for the soundstage for that shot. I mean, it looked very, very convincing. I mean, when you're told it's a soundstage, and if you really want to get the eagle eye, I mean, even then, I still don't think you're the average person. People that are on the crew would know, but us fans looking from the outside looking in would not know. It was very, very well done. And even the lighting, I mean, that goes to show you with Marshall and his team and everything like that. But the glow sticks, and everything, or the heat sticks, whatever, just with just the way everything is just put together is just absolutely beautiful. So kudos on a great episode. And we do have some things on the agenda to talk about, your directorial debut, but having Vince direct that episode, were you kind of mentally taking some notes, as things are happening with Vince?
Yes, it's always great to watch Vince work. I've been on set with him before,
mm-hmm.
Several times. And it's always, he's brilliant, and his eye is just unparalleled. So he knows exactly where he wants things. It's interesting because he has such a strong visualization of a scene, but he's also very willing to get there on the day and throw it out. So he's both rigid and flexible, and that's a skill that's very hard to come by. He knows what he's looking for, but he's also open to seeing something better. Which that is definitely something that I was, happy to learn from and
sure.
to do my best with. So.
Awesome. Well, here's a good question from Arabella, and some of the questions, if they could be, you may not be able to comment on them, but I think this one's pretty normal. She says, my question for Gordon is, what episode are you currently working on? And a yes or no question without any spoilers. Have you guys decided how the show is going to end? Oh, that's a good one.
I'll take the last part first.
Okay, good.
We haven't, until it's done, nothing's done. But and we're a few episodes. We're currently in the midst of working on episode 9. We're working on right now, Breaking. So so we're a little bit away from knowing exactly. We're doing 13 this year. So we're a little bit away from being certain. We have a very strong idea of what we want, or some version of what we think would be a satisfying ending. But as we constantly say in the room, the devil's in the details. So, things, when you can have a strong idea about something, and then when you actually start asking the questions of, like, all right, how does that work? Really, how does that work? Really, how would you stage that? Really, what does that look like? Sometimes it becomes impossible, or just doesn't actually work, or it doesn't say the thing that you want it to say. It doesn't go with what you've broken. So we may surprise ourselves. I think we've been talking about some version of an ending that we like for quite some time. So I think there's a chance that it'll stick, or some version of it will stick. Like the Bagman episode, the Mike and Jimmy wandering in the desert together had been a pitch and as an image for probably since the first season. Was the idea, wouldn't it be great to have them handcuffed together, walking through the desert, drinking each other's urine? That was always the pitch. It was like this image that Peter had and loved, and we always like, yeah, that's great, and we'd try it, see if we could find some version of it, and you can see that's not what we did.
No,
but that is what we did. So it's that kind of thing that I feel like. And the other question, so what are we working on? Yes, I'm episode 3. I think I can say that safely. That I'm writing episode 3 for next season. So
that's nice. I think Tom had said, and I think this is well, actually, no, I shouldn't say. He didn't give me any spoilers or anything like that. I'm just saying it was an episode that he had said, you guys, I could probably say this. I've phrased the question this way. You guys are, as a team, are much further than episode 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're much further down. We're 3/4 of the way through.
Perfect.
Season.
That's right in the that's right in the wheelhouse that Tom told me as well too. I just didn't want to put words in anyone's mouths, so to speak. So perfect. That's great. So great episodes. Great question from Arabella. Here's a really good one from Lenny. Lenny says, in 50% off, when Jimmy prepares his monologue at the courthouse, I noticed the show used a little bit of walk and talk. Would you use that in season 6? Because that really brings out so when he's so much when he's in action.
I mean, we try and use whatever techniques we can, so it was very effective there. And I feel like, if a sequence presents itself, I think it's more, we try and match our techniques to our stories because of the way that we work starting with our, where we are in the room with the writing, and then sort of figure out, and sometimes that happens at the same time. Sometimes it's, the best way to visually present that is going to be this, and it all kind of comes together. But sometimes we figure it out on the day. So, if there's something that feels like a walk and talk, and we know it, and we know that that's what it needs to be, we will use it happily. So maybe we'll use it in season 6. It really depends on kind of what we're doing, which I can't really talk about.
Of course, exactly. Before I ask a super chat question here, this is coming out from Shashank Vichari. Now I'm trying to remember if I actually retained the thought. Oh yes. I'll go to his question first because I lost it. It was super chat from Shashank Vichari says, do you believe big moments in an episode are a sudden collision of events or a steady chain of events preceding that they finally explode?
Interesting. I think both techniques have merit. I think sometimes a surprise that really just comes, that blindsides you, can be effective. I do think it feels to me like you kind of want to surprise. This is just a personal taste thing, and I think it's sometimes for the show, is that it's something that is surprising, but feels like you've been prepared for it. That's the surprise that kind of makes you go, oh, I knew it, or you felt it coming, even if you didn't know the specific thing. You know, I feel like we did that. I feel like pretty well in Chicanery, where you didn't really, hopefully, you didn't know for sure all the dimensions of how the cell phone in the pocket for Chuck was going to work, but you could kind of feel that Jimmy, you had to know that there was going to be something. Jimmy wasn't just going to go quietly into that good night. So it felt like that was a surprise, hopefully, but it was a surprise that had been set up in a way that made it, when it came, you go, oh, that's what it was. That's the thing. Versus I'm not sure what the opposite of a proponent is. Like I watch a lot of horror movies, and the movies that I don't particularly like jump scares, because I just feel like that's being startled. That's not being scared.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you can startle people with a change in events a lot, but if you haven't done what you're saying, building to something that suddenly comes out of the events, I feel like that can be more satisfying.
I agree.
Again, not saying either is both are worthwhile techniques sometimes, but I guess I would prefer things to kind of develop out of the events and then blow up.
Oh, I agree. You could put 20 people in a room, and probably all 20 of those people could scare somebody, like, and film like a little home budget movie and scare them really bad. But out of those 20, who can actually write something really good dramatically without a jump scare and to have that impact? So yeah, very, very well said. What I was going to say, I remembered very quickly. This would be a very brief question from myself. So I know Tom has said this a million times, and Vince has said this a million times, and I'm sure all of you have, like, this is something you all acknowledge. You kind of love and hate painting yourselves into a corner, and that's kind of nice. You get into a corner now. How do we get out of this? So you're 3/4 of the way through the seasons, so somewhere around that neighborhood for season 6. How many corners, if any, have you painted yourself into so far?
I mean, the whole show is one big corner in so many ways. So, yeah, the corners get tighter and tighter.
Claustrophobic.
So, which again, like you say, I mean, I can't remember. Like it was maybe John Donne. It's been a long time since I studied English poetry, but there was a poem about sonnets being great riches in a narrow room, and like that's the form, the density of the form, and the strictness of the form can sort of open up possibilities because you have to adhere to them. And so we have sort of some strictures that we have to adhere to, and some plot points that we have to adhere to, which is a pain. And when we're actually bumping up against them, there's nothing fun, and no one's like, "What a great opportunity!
Yeah. This
is awesome." Everyone's like, "This sucks. I don't like this. I wish we hadn't done something. I wish this decision that was made that made sense at the time, that now we have to kind of like explain. I wish we hadn't done that. We do it all the time, but in the end, usually once we've butted our heads against it and driven ourselves a little bit nuts, we come up with something that's actually hopefully feels richer because of it, because you kind of go, all right, well, there's a whole wild, woolly world out there. So if you can come up with a thing that makes something that was a problem make sense, then it feels like that thing that was a problem was set there to set up something else.
Yeah.
So,
you know what it kind of reminds me of? I'm assuming you're probably a bit of a Simpsons fan. At least I am. I haven't watched them much anymore, but I've one of the Treehouse of Horrors, probably around probably season around 15, 16, somewhere in that neighborhood. Probably earlier than that even. Homer goes back in time, and he steps on the snake, whatever, and then everything goes. It ruins everything in the forward.
Yeah. That's gosh, it's time. I think it's Treehouse 5 in season 6.
Oh, way back. Okay, so way back. Yeah.
Time and Punishment. And
that's kind of like what's happening with these characters. They're already set in stone, especially with the Breaking Bad characters. So we can't do this because they have to be here. This person's not here, so they can't do that. I don't want to be in your shoes. I love to watch, but I not want to be in your shoes.
Yes. Yeah. No. It is a challenge. It is. It's interesting, and I think more than most shows, we really kind of are walking in the shoes of tragedy, like this classical tragedy models, because the future is sort of written in a way that, obviously not all of it because we have the gene part of the story, but some part of the future is written, and you can kind of track and say, well, I get why you would make some of these decisions, but no, they're leading you to this place. It's like, Oedipus, don't kill your dad. Like you just kind of, that there's something driving you, and that the choices that are going to get you there are the choices that the character's making. So yeah,
I guess we could give a Tom a reference here. Bad Choice Road, right? It's a road we go down. You just don't know what's going to happen, but you get on that road, and you made the choice. Here's a good question from Lori Gordon. She says, "What episode of Better Call Saul are you the most proud of, and why?" And I mean, it might not be the biggest award nominee one, or it could be anything. Which one are you proud of the most, and why?
I mean, I'm proud. I am proud of many of them for various different reasons, because they sort of all have impressed me. I feel it's a little bit of a Sophie's choice where I can't. It's hard. It would be very hard for me to pick. I'm very proud of the work that we did on Bagman, because it was so grueling, and it felt like being a survivalist, and being able to do that. Very physical filmmaking and very cinematic filmmaking. I'm very proud of Chicanery, because my mother was a lawyer, and she died just after or just before we started breaking that episode.
Oh wow!
And so there was kind of a feeling of, for me at least, of kind of doing right by the lawyers out there, doing the best I could, as a non-lawyer, to sort of do that kind of showcase piece. Obviously 5-0 is my first episode of television. So there's a lot of stuff, and obviously there's something that I'm very proud of in every episode that I've done, and there's something that I'm proud of in episodes that I didn't write because we're so collaborative.
Yeah, contributions.
And, everyone's fingerprints are on everybody's scripts in a way, in a good way, in the way that's the best version of collaboration, where somebody else had an idea and you went, oh, that's a better idea than anything I could have come up with. I'm so glad you're here.
Yep.
We're using it. Because it's not I'm taking it. I'm not stealing it for something else. We're all making the same show. So, I feel proud of things that are scattered throughout the whole.
I get it. In the music world, as myself being a musician, maybe the bass player's written the song, we're on stage and jamming, and I play a little lick over the thing that he's wrote, and he nods over, and you just feel that, right? So you've contributed something to it for the betterment. That's awesome. This is a good question this was from Andrea. It's got to find it again. And we're talking about Bagman. This is a perfect continuation. She says, Bagman feels more likely to be assigned to Breaking Bad, kind of a Breaking Bad vibe. What made you choose to go in a completely different direction than usual Better Call Saul? So yeah, kind of cinematic, kind of movie-esque. And I know you've been quoted in a lot of interviews saying it was almost a standalone in a lot of areas. But it did seem like a bit of a kind of a darker, kind of a nod to Breaking Bad, but maybe you can explain some of that.
I feel like we emerged from where we were in the season, and we sort of were asking questions about, here's this guy. He's started calling himself Saul Goodman. He's sort of changing his name, not just kind of, and in a professional capacity. He'd been doing it selling cell phones, which, that's one thing. But he'd been doing that. He's doing it as a lawyer now, which is a big change for him in the season. And we kind of were wondering, a lot of, I feel like the architecture of season 5 was about pushing that decision and saying, all right, so this is what your decision is. How far are you willing to go? So much of our discussion is he Saul Goodman? And when we say that, we don't mean is he calling himself Saul Goodman, or even is he wearing the suits, but sort of like, is the guy that we meet in Breaking Bad who feels in a certain way, is it this guy? Is it that guy? Would he? One of the questions we ask all the time is like, would he suggest killing one of his clients as a solution to a problem?
Yeah.
And if he would, then we know we're not there. We know something. We know there's still story left. And so for season 5, we felt like, what does it look like when you take Jimmy and he's calling himself Saul Goodman and he's talking a good game? What happens when he's thrown in with criminal elements that are beyond what he's used to, that are the thing that he's sort of, they're the size of his swagger, but they're not necessarily the size of his heart at this point. And so it felt important to us to kind of really rub his nose in that. And that was what led to, I think that was what led to both Bagman and Bad Choice Road in a lot of ways, because Bagman was about sort of going through it. It was the walk in the desert. It's a very classic trope in literature and films. It's the trial in the desert. And that felt important. And then for us, it was also, and then Bad Choice Road was so much saying, that can't be a thing that seals itself off and then it's done. It's a huge trauma. What does that look like? How does he get through that? How does that change things? And so, for us, I think it was those two elements were very important. And they kind of dictated the form of it. It was more like, we could have sort of had them break down in a desert and then, done a series of dissolves and they walk out and they're in bad shape. But you don't really feel like somebody went through something.
No.
You're not sort of stuck with them, and you're not stuck with them asking questions about what they're willing to do in the desert. So that was sort of how that whole thing kind of came together, was about saying, no, once they're out there, once this happens, once we're in this, if Jimmy's willing to go and get $7 million illegally, he's not supposed to be doing this.
No. Right?
You're not supposed to have $7 million cross the border.
No.
So once he's willing to do that, what else is he willing to do? And is he, what's the thing that's driving him on? So yeah, it was really more of a question of, for me at least, I think, answering questions about the character that led us. And I think the reason that it may feel more Breaking Bad-ish, maybe, is that we're getting closer to it. That guy is getting closer and closer incrementally. He's one step closer, and he's one step closer. And those were big steps, both going through it and then coming home and figuring out how to live with it. Two huge steps in the character's evolution. So
yeah. Well, think of it even on a smaller scale as well, too. Like we're talking about $7 million crossing borders is something you don't do, but let's just say it was for $5,000 and Jimmy's volunteering to go pick it up. We know it's dirty money. That alone is a crime. You know, I mean, you could put someone else as a middleman, go get it. Jimmy doesn't know it's a crime. He doesn't know. He brings in the money, gets the bond. He's out, Lalo's out. But I mean, he went in knowing that it was going to be dirty money. So even that was breaking the law. And we're seeing, you know, Kim and Jimmy doing those things, bending the rules, you know, mail fraud, previous seasons as well, too. So yeah, it's great fun. No, here's a question that was already answered, and this is from Mrs. Wexler, and I believe she was the one that did that. I believe she was the one that did the cartoon drawing of you today on Twitter.
It was so flattering.
Wasn't that cool? Nice. Yeah, awesome. So the Breaking Bad and the Gilliverse and all these talented people out there. They're so very, very talented. We have a lot of talented people out there. Keep tagging us. We'd love to see that stuff. It's fantastic. Now, I'm just going to acknowledge her question because she says, I've heard multiple times that the writers like to write themselves, into a corner. They've been in corners since we talked about that, but I just want to mention that. And I think you mentioned this as well, too, but this is from Michelle. She says, can someone answer? He did the I broke my boy speech. And yeah, you're right. And that was so, you see the sorrow in Mike's eyes. Oh, and this is important as well, too. You talked about chicanery, and you mentioned the loss of your mom. I've lost my mom as well, so I feel, serious condolences for the loss of your mom. We always think our parents are immortal, don't we?
Feels like it.
Yeah, right. I know, right? I wish they were still here. I'm sure she was very proud. Continuing on, so we got question April. In Nome East, whose idea was it? I'm not sure. Nome East, whose idea was it for actual bowling balls? I'm not sure what that was, but I guess that would be, yeah. So you know the episode.
That was my first directing episode. Whose idea was it for actual?
Namaste. Namaste. I'm getting voice to text. Sorry.
No. Yes. Namaste. I can't remember actually. I think it was me or Tom or some combination of the two, or we went through, I mean, this was one of those things that was pitched in a whole sequence, right? So we knew that we wanted to do something. We knew that it was something, we wanted it to be something petty and sort of vandalish. And we pitched all these things. We pitched all these different versions. And we pitched different kinds of damage that could be done. And really it was just like, a bowl and different things he could throw or different things he could at one point we were pitching, he climbs up a tree and goes out on a limb and drops something. And then we're just like, he can throw a bowling ball over that fence. If you have a bowling ball. And this one I know, Tom found this great video of this guy, I'm sure it was a viral video a long, long time ago, of this guy lining up for I'm not a bowler, a throw. Yeah. And releases way too late. Oh. And the ball goes up and it hits the drop ceiling. And fall. Collapses. Yeah. And we're like, you know what? If you can do that with a bowling ball that you're just trying to roll, you could probably get it over a fence. So it became something where we're like, this is it's almost purpose built for the thing. So it just felt too good to pass up. And then it was, figuring out the mechanics of what he's trying to do and how that would look. So that, we sort of, I feel like sometimes a lot of our scams they're like sculpting in marble instead of sculpting in clay. Mm-hmm. So you knock a piece of marble off and now you see a little bit better what the shape is, and you knock another piece off and then it gets more and more refined and more and more refined. Not that I know the pure process of sculpting in marble, but you're not building, you're not adding things to it. You're taking away things. And then the more you take away, the smoother the edges get. So,
well, and I find it believable too, because a lot of people would take the easy way out. I mean, especially when you're trying to get the best, on-screen time for each of your characters, stuff like that. I mean, I think he had 3 balls to throw over. Was that correct? Do you remember? Okay. And the first one missed, right? And I mean, you could have easily said, boom, jackpot, you sank my battleship on the first shot. But, that sets it up, right? And maybe he's going to fail at his attempt because, I mean, Jimmy sometimes comes up with these ideas and they're kind of like me. They backfire really bad, right? And pulled off.
Yeah, it could have been something that he could have gotten caught while he was doing it. That was certainly a possibility, especially I feel like and that was, we talked about this because he lands it on the second ball, and then he throws another because he's already done it. He's already damaged the car. He's already thrown a ball and put a pretty hefty divot in the Jaguar's hood.
Yep.
But he doesn't. That's not enough for Jimmy. So
takes out the windshield, the back windshield.
Yeah.
That was great. And then I love how Howard's explaining it after too. Yeah, he threw bowling balls, nearly destroyed my car. I love Patrick's delivery. That line was great when he's talking to Kim. Karina says, and this is funny because not Karina's statement, but when I said Nome East, my better half Sandra, she uses voice to text me from upstairs what these questions are. And you know what Siri's like, or any kind of voice to text, right? Sometimes some things come out very inappropriate, and I'm like Ron Burgundy. I'll read anything that's put on the teleprompter. So I don't mean to offend anybody if I say something crazy. Karina says we'd be directing another episode as well. So you've got one in the can so far, partially. Do you think you'll be directing this year or next year, I should say?
My hope is I believe that's in the planning. Hopefully,
good.
But if 2020 has taught me anything, it's hold everything lightly.
Yeah.
The future is an undiscovered country, so
it sure is.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm. I have my fingers crossed for you as well too. Blazy Gardner says, if you could adopt any work of classic literature into Breaking Bad universe, what would it be?
Wow, that's a great question. Bring it into the Breaking Bad universe, or in the style of Breaking Bad. Wow. I mean, I feel like to me maybe this is just because of whatever, but the classic literature that feels most Breaking Bad-ish to me is Dostoevsky, the classic, the big novels, right? Mm-hmm. So Devils and Karamazov and Crime and Punishment, those all feel, and to some extent even like The Gambler, but I feel like Dostoevsky feels like he's in that same world of really rich characters doing bad things and doing good things and trying to figure out what the right thing to do is against a very complicated backdrop.
Nice. Very nice. Good question. Blazy has good questions. All of our fans here have great questions. Teresa Gordon says, please show us the mug that you're drinking from. I'm not sure if she's talking to you or me, so we both have some. You got some Better Call Saul. I love yours, man. Nice. The Insider Podcast.
Peter Gould made these mugs for folks on our, because we do a podcast about the episodes to fans, and it's a great mug. It
is. I know, right? It looks almost like I had a bowl of clam chowder today. It's
great it's a good soup mug.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. Renata says, during the filming of Bagman, please tell us what parts were heavily improvised. Bob Odenkirk must have had some surprises that worked. I know a lot of the things tend to be scripted, right? There's not always a lot of improvisation, but was there in that one?
In the song when he was singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall, we'd written through take a dollar, pass it a roller, and we needed more for the second go, because when we actually, you write it and you kind of go, this is what he's doing, and then it should sort of accordion out over the space. Mm-hmm. But we needed more. As we were actually blocking it and seeing how long it took, and when he would be kind of catching on and stopping singing. And so Bob was like, "How about?" He's like, "I don't think he would just repeat the same bad rhyme now that he's found it. What if we do take a buck, pass it for luck?" And I'm like, "That's great. I love it." And so that's what he did. But it was less in the vein. Bob is a writer at heart. And he does change things sometimes, but they're very small. And usually he'll be like, "Hey, I wanted to change this word." So it's less like it comes out of him and you just go, "Oh, he said that thing." It's more like he will say, "You know what? I was thinking about adding this, or I was thinking about changing this. What do you think?" And then we sort of talk through if there's something that needs to be preserved or some way we can kind of collaborate. So it's another collaboration, less than pure improv. Not that Bob's improv skills are incredible, and obviously there are times where we're like, just let him run, see what he does. But that's also kind of, he's got so much to do. He has so much work to do. He has so many lines to do. It's almost unfair to just be like, you know what, we're just not going to write this scene. You go ahead.
Yeah.
It's like, we want to, at the very least, be like, hey, this is what we think this should be. If you can do better, do better. But like,
yeah, you have to go in with confidence.
Yeah. So it's rare that it's it is rare that it's a pure improv. It's things that'll be tweaked for all the actors. They want to know that they're very good about saying like, hey, I'm having trouble getting this word or this rhythm or this thought out through these words. And you sort of talk through what you want and what you need from the character.
I'm assuming in an episode like Wexler versus Goodman, and when Jimmy's doing the green screen stuff, and I'm assuming that was a little bit of ad lib when he's doing some of his one-offs, right? Was that scripted too?
Yeah, mostly scripted.
Okay.
But occasionally he'll rip things, but very, very little.
Okay, that's good to know.
There's less. I guess it would be there's less than you think, and it probably is less pure improv-y than you think, because more often it's like it's working it out with the writer and director to be like, what do you think of this? Does this feel right? Because sometimes it's great, but he wants to know that we're doing the right thing, especially because the reason that the writers are there on set is because we know through the whole we know several episodes past where we are, and so we can say, I like it, but I think we want to protect for something else, or
that's right.
What if we did this? So it's always a dance, but it's a very healthy, I think, collaboration.
Agreed. Here's 2 questions from my better half, and of course I have to ask them because she makes this show what it is. So if I don't ask her questions, number 1, this is kind of a comical question. She says, how does it feel to have a better mustache than the broad stash man himself? I'm not sure if you saw my older shows, but I had the full-blown Derek Smalls mustache, and I shaved it for a Halloween costume. So you're outdoing me by far. So there you go. Nice. You're outdoing me. And she's noticed some tattoos. She spots jewelry and tattoos and that kind of stuff. Can you tell us a bit about your tattoos?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I got into, I have a bunch of quotes. They're all
cool.
There's single quotes from works of literature that I like, or, meant something to me. I've got a Camus, I've got a Brecht, Chekhov, just some of my, my heroes and people that I think have interesting things to say. So just have to. They're all over. I've been kind of cut off in the pandemic, but I have a couple in the pocket that I'm ready to do, because it takes. They're somewhat. This is a whole thing. I'm sorry, but they're somewhat symmetrical. So every time I do one on one side, it has to take up the same area and same kind of space on the other side. So,
no, that makes sense. I would, if I did that, I would be doing the same.
So I have to find quotes that have the same, that I can lay out the same on both sides and then fit into the space. So it's the whole process.
Are you telling your tattoo artist, okay, it has to be a size 18 font, it's got to be cursive, or?
Oh, I do it.
Oh, you do it yourself?
Yeah. No, I lay them out, and then I check them out, and I print them, and I kind of lay them out, and then I take them out to my tattoo artist, is fantastic with text, because they're all text.
Yeah.
And he's really great about it. And we do. There's obviously adjustment, but he's amazing at kind of getting the lines and these tiny little things. Yeah. So I do the laying out, and then.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
The 18 points and the whatever.
Well, I'm gonna be selfish for a second and ask one of my other questions I had on the agenda for the evening. So, back with what was it, season 4, Something Beautiful, another one of my favorite episodes. Like, I mean, you've written several of my favorites. Chicanery that we talked about earlier, obviously Bagman, great. But with that episode, you brought in both Ira and Gail Bedecker back, and I know if I got the story straight somewhat, I think near the end of season 1, wrapping up that, I think Peter ran into David, and they had some dinner and talked about, it'd be nice maybe sometime bring Gail back in. Were you like, first of all, it's so cool to bring in these characters from Breaking Bad. That's got to be a cool moment for you. But did you say in the writer's room, hey, I've got guys and girls, I've got the right moment for Gail to come back in? How did that work? And I know it was very brief too, because he was filming something else and it only had like a day to shoot. But how did that kind of all the ducks get in a row for that?
Yeah, it was threading the needle, because he's on Billions and he's fantastic and demands deservedly so. such a lovely guy. And I can't remember exactly how we came to it. I think it was more like we were sort of starting to ask the question of what's the state of Gus's enterprise right now. We wanted to know. We just, since we brought him in season 3, and we kind of laid the groundwork of what some parts of it, where he was. And so we wanted to know, and we looked at the timeline that was sort of established and asked, could he be talking to Gale? Could he be working on this now? And if he's working on this now, it sort of opened up the question of, all right, so if he's knowing Gale, we had in mind, I think at that point, that we would be heading towards, at the end of season 4, our Germans arriving, or in the middle of season 4, our Germans to build the super lab arriving. And so we felt like we should be checking in with Gale, because Gale pretty much designed the super lab. So, so we just got lucky, and we pitched it. Sometimes we do that. We pitch and we're like, all right, hopefully he's available. Hopefully we can thread the needle. Hopefully we'll be able to get him and be able to make this work. And then it was just, it was just a joy to do. And we were able to get him to, sing the Element song, which was something, that Vince had wanted Walt to sing way back. Had always thought it would be great, and we got to have Gale do it, and he nailed it.
Memorize the lines very quickly. That's a lot of words. It's a lot of words.
A lot of words. Yeah.
I mean, I sometimes try to recite Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and I got to okay, let me go on Google here real quick. Yeah. Here's a good question, and it leads into something I was going to ask as well too. I read something. Some of my friends, and Karina was one of them. She sent me a link. Giancarlo did an interview recently saying they're looking at, you guys are all looking towards March, whatever, to start shooting. And this goes over to Joss's question. So it says, what are the difficulties about writing the next season, knowing that the actors are going to have to social distance? Has that painted you in any corners? We talked about painting corners. Now there's physical things now, not just words on the paper. How's that going to work for you, for the team, and writing for that?
Yeah, I mean, we have been writing the show that we write. Mm-hmm. Honestly, we are, we know that there's going to be what comes up in production, but there's always stuff that comes up in production. Honestly, it's very difficult for us to anticipate. We could psych ourselves out and be like, oh, well, it's going to be impossible with these restrictions to do blank. But if we talk to our producers, they'll be like, oh no, that's not actually that difficult. This other thing is difficult, which happens has happened across the board with all these other things that would have seemed impossible or just seemed, too difficult. We thought that, it's speaking of like something beautiful, it was very difficult to burn the car at the end of the act, to have the cousins show up and burn the car. That was really difficult we were shooting that in February, so we had very limited daylight. And we were way out. We were, like an hour and a half out of Albuquerque. So just the logistics of that were extremely difficult, but we figured it out. So we are hoping that we're not a crowd heavy show. We are, we don't have a ton of characters that need to be in tight spaces. Mm-hmm. And we're an outdoor show a lot. Yeah. We have stuff that are out there. So, maybe it's not naive, but I think we're writing the show that we're trying to end the show that we've been making without making those concessions, and we'll have to figure out how that works with this, how we can do that safely. Mm-hmm. We don't 100% know how to do it safely, but we know we're either going to do it safely or we're not going to do it.
Yeah,
so
wait.
Like, all right, we can wait if that's necessary. No one's hoping for that. But,
no,
we'd rather. It's a TV show. We don't want to put people's.
No, there's two options. It's do it safe or wait.
Yep. Right. It's do it right and do it safe.
Yeah.
Or it's do it right after when we can do it right. We just don't want to make it kind of. And it's not even. That sounds very snooty. Like we're. I don't know. It sounds like we're being, aesthetes of some kind. But I don't think we could write that show. I feel like adding that extra, because we have so many other corners as we've been talking about. I think if we tried to be like, okay, so we can have this character here. If we were trying to figure out without the benefit of a location or a locations manager or just knowing where we're going to shoot certain things, we just have to stop. I don't know how we could do it. It would break our brains. It's breaking my brain even thinking about it.
I know. Well, like you said, you got so many things in your favor. I mean, it could be worse. It could be a studio shots all the time, 90%, 99%, on a sound stage. And then, then you're a little trickier, right? Outside is good. That's
outside. Studios are actually good though because they're controlled.
Well, yeah, ventilation and all that stuff. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Everyone's kind of learning right now too. Without going into full details, Marshall Adams, he had shared something with us when he was on the show, how the project he's working on right now and how they're doing things together. So all the creatives can talk together and hey, how you guys doing that? How you guys doing that? And you can all kind of because everyone wants to get back filming. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to film.
You can learn from people. We're trying to learn from people that are going now. People are shooting and they're shooting safely, and some people are doing different things and they're trying to match we're trying to learn from what people are doing right, and figure out how we can use those things for ourselves. But every show's different, and every show runs slightly different. Every show shoots different, so we're just gonna do the best we can and hope that we can kind of deliver the show that we've been making.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel like we will.
Oh, I think you will too. I got the same impression from Tom. Tom and I would talk off the air before the show, and we'd even mention this. Tom had mentioned on the show, we're like, when I say you guys and girls, we're not changing the show for what's going on. We just have to wait till the path is clear. But the show is going to be the show, and we have an end in mind, and we're going to get there, right? You're not going to change it. Okay, now we suddenly have a pandemic because in the world of Breaking Bad, there was not this pandemic, so it doesn't exist technically, so we have to ignore it. But be safe about it. April has a question, says, do you have any other projects besides this at the moment? So we always talk about that too. After the, we don't want to think about wrapping this up, the Better Call Saul, but do you have other things in the pipeline that you're working on or even currently right now?
Yeah, I'm developing some things. I have a memoir that I think was announced that I'm working on. Those are all, they're at a low boil because I don't, they're so far in the future because we haven't finished this, but I am, I think that's the nature of the business. You can't wait until you're done with something to kind of start thinking about where you're going, because everything moves very slowly, especially development, like writing something and getting it on air. Sometimes it happens very fast, but more often it just takes some taking. So you kind of want to start thinking about like, okay, what am I doing in a year? What am I doing after that?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about it and I'm working on stuff, ideas.
Keeping the irons in the fire for sure. That's good. I think Tom's going to be working at Cinnabon when this is all over.
That would be great. He would make a hell of a Cinnabon guy.
Yeah, for sure.
I would eat Tom's Cinnabons.
Okay, and you know what? I could just imagine if Tom was on the show right now. Oh my God, I'm never prepared for the things that he would say, and I love it. I mean, it's all family friendly, but some of the things he would surprise me, and so I have a feeling that comment, the way you said that, would spark a really good reply from Tom. So
I hope so.
I'm going to cue that up. I'm going to say, Tom, look what he said here at this point. Here's a good question, a really good question from Michael. Question for Gordon: does Mike have further to fall, or is he pretty much the dead-eye killer we know in Breaking Bad?
That is an excellent question. That is a really, really good question. I do think that there are some for him to go. He's pretty close. He's been pretty close. I think for him, the death of having to kill Werner, the guy that he really liked and he felt a kinship with, was a big step, because it was a challenge to his loyalty and his self-preservation and what he was willing to do to be a criminal. And he did it, and he kind of worked his way through what that meant for him and came back around to being a kind of loyal person for Gus. So I do think he's pretty close. I do think hopefully we're finding some new territory as we're getting closer to the end for him that can shed some light on some other corners of his journey. But that is a good question.
He is, you know, a stone cold killer, you know, when he's needed to be. But even in Breaking Bad, there were moments less and less and less in Breaking Bad than now. But you know, he would have a heart and have a conscience. I mean, there's times when he even let Lydia go, you know, and just there's just certain moments where you could still feel that heart, and you're seeing it a little bit. Mike's slipping right now into that full blown kind of as Jimmy's going into Saul, Mike is going into that role, whatever his role is too. But I mean, letting what was the example? I'm thinking of oh, I totally lost it with Nacho. With Nacho, right? You know, he's talking to Gus. He's like, we should let Varka go. He's been loyal, blah blah blah. And you know, he really felt it. And I think he saw, you know, his dad, the relationship with his dad, and he really felt that, you know, we got to let him go. And he's going to lose that soon. You know, he's not going to be that caring guy as much anymore because he's paid to do a job, right? Yeah. And you have to answer to your superiors too. Here's a question, a good one. I know a lot of people are thinking about this. And this is more, maybe we can use you as a fan hypothesizing, because I know you may not be able to answer fully, but Lori says, have the writers discussed doing a full Gene episode?
Oh, yes.
Good. I think that's all we have to say on that without going too far, but that would be fantastic because that we're going to have 3 extra episodes, correct? So that buys some time. And I know the stories, I mean, it's not just, okay, we got 3 more, so let's just throw everything at the fan and see what happens. But it's nice now you can let some things breathe a little bit.
I mean, I do think one way or another, however many episodes or pieces that we see of it, I do think it's important that part of the journey is important.
Yeah, exactly. Here is a good question from Nat. She says, so you're a writer's assistant and I guess probably production assistant and everything as well too in Breaking Bad. Can you kind of tell us about the role? Did you type down everything that was said? Was it almost like like taking minutes, or was there any audio recorder? How does your job work? She's asking.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. Writer's assistant, I'll speak to that one. I think it's more the question, but writer's assistant, you take like minutes. So what you're trying to do is you don't want to write down absolutely everything that's said for a variety of reasons. You are trying to kind of capture the essence of a pitch, because when you're pitching, you're always kind of on the edge of not making any sense, because you can't wait until you've kind of written the whole thing out in your head to pitch it. It just doesn't, you can't do it because you want to sometimes throw out an idea that is not fully formed, because it's not the idea, but it's a direction. And so hearing it will help shape the conversation. So all that to say is the job of the writer's assistant is to capture those moments of lightning in a bottle, but also to protect people from sounding like idiots. You don't want to read the notes and be like, oh God, I just blathered there. You want to get the essence of what's said and make it sound a little bit better. Like I'm not a well-spoken person, and I'm certainly not a well-spoken person when I'm like pitching, because I things fragment and they fall apart. So it's the job of the writer's assistant is to kind of pull some of those pieces together and be able to preserve a record of kind of what the pitches are, not just the ones that are landing, but the ones that aren't, pieces of things. You want to kind of be able to have a record of what the day looked like. We do not record it for the same reason that you just don't want a record. Mm-hmm. You don't want a record because it's not because it's like we're sitting and plotting something nefarious or something. It's just, if you record it, suddenly there's a little bit of a chilling factor, because you can't let it rip. You can't. Yeah. You're thinking about posterity instead of thinking about the characters. You're thinking about how it sounds to try a pitch, rather than just trying to pitch. Just rip it. Just throw it out there. So anything that makes you feel more self-conscious in the room tends to be, it's just not great. You just don't want it as much as you can. So the writer's assistant is super crucial, because as everyone's pitching and they're trying not to be thinking about how it writes or how it looks or anything like that. You're just trying to think about the kernel of the idea. They're kind of pulling it together and writing down, these notes that are the beats of the story, the essence of the dialogue that's pitched, anything key in the dialogue. And then those things kind of go with the cards that we make when we're sort of formalizing what we're actually doing. So those two pieces are the things that you have that kind of record what the scene and what the episode and what the ideas are.
Gotcha. Well, obviously we talked about contributions several times tonight. So another major contribution, and just in your role alone, and the writer's assistant, production assistant. I mean, it's contributions that help the whole team overall. Just a couple last questions before we wrap up here. We're just about done. Statement from Jennifer Stevens. Jennifer Stevens is one of our new channel members, which is nice. Thank you, Jennifer. She joined, I think, today. I'd buy a Gordon Smith bobblehead. We'll talk about some bobbleheads in a minute. That'd be great. Get some writers, bobbleheads. And we're working pretty closely with those guys, with Warren Royal over at Royal Baubles. You never know. They're going to be making some announcements sometime soon. It's Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul related. So we'll watch for that. Maybe we'll have some writers. I get all the writers here on my desk as well, too. And another super chat from Stank Vicheri says, do you believe the characters in the Gilliverse are victims of circumstance or a result of choices leading down the bad choice road? That's a good one. And that could be bad choice road. We talk about Jimmy, but I mean, that could be anybody. Are they a victim of circumstance, or are they getting on that road and that's their fault?
No, that is a great question. I think, like I was saying about sort of the essence of a tragedy, right? Like we use the word tragic. I remember this was something that like one of my drama teachers was just so adamant about. It infuriated him the way that modern parlance uses the word tragedy and tragic, because they just use it to mean something bad happened. But the essence of a tragedy, he was like just super adamant about this, so it's always stuck with me, is that the actions of the characters lead to their fate. Their fate is absolutely preordained, because these are, the essence of it is from a different mindset that says, no, you have no control over you. Your free will is, sure, you have free will, good for you. But like, but that's not to say that your choices don't lead you to your fate. So I think it's a weird way on the knife's edge between both of those two worldviews, that they are victims of circumstance because they're the victims of the world, right? And the world that they're born into, and the world that sort of forms them, and the fate that's sort of waiting for them. But you don't get there without making those choices. And that's the thing that makes it tragic, is that as they're going, you can see, and sometimes the tough part for us is to dramatize exactly, it is the bad choice road. I think that was why that was such a perfect title and such an important moment for us, there's two paths there before you, and you can take one or you can take the other, and you have that choice. There is a choice. And you for us, it's this showing like, no, you're at a moment. See, at this moment, you could do this.
Yeah.
And then seeing the characters not, and you're like, no, don't do that. Don't, oh, no, you could have just done this. And then you kind of can feel that it's some part of, it's another piece of Jimmy's soul that slipped away, or it's another notch down the road that's leading you to a bad direction. So
you know what I just thought of? It's kind of creepy that I thought about this. It is Friday the 13th. It's like in any Michael Myers movie, Jason movie, I should say. Any Jason movie. It's a blonde girl running into the shed. Don't go in there, right? That's a bad choice road. She's going in there. She's blonde. She's first to die. It just happens, right? And she knows that. That's the road she got on. Before I ask the very last question for the evening, it's a good question from Mao, if I'm pronouncing the name right. You and I were talking about this off the air earlier, and then the question about the bobbleheads come up. So I put a thing on Twitter yesterday. I had all the nice Better Call Saul figures from bobbleheads.com, and we have two new cats, as I shared with you off the air. And Wendy, our biggest new cat, she went over across my amp and she knocked over Kim Wexler and she snapped her head off. Kim was decapitated on the ground, and I was quite heartbroken about it. And so anyways, I tried to fix it, and I was able to fix it, and she kind of looks like Franken Wexler. I'm trying to put it up to the camera. I'll put it to this camera here because you probably can't, the audience probably can't see it. Anyways, it's very bad. It's Franken Wexler. And the caption I put on my tweet was, I said, writers, please don't let this be a premonition of the future of Kim Wexler. And then, a lot of people are like, no. And then even Ray, she commented, she says, I would like to speak with this Wendy of yours. And then the Saul Goodman account says season 6 finale. And the Better Call Saul team, the social team, says, shut your mouth. And it just spawned this whole big thing. But I'm assuming, we won't go to, you've been interviewed a million times and asked the same question about the future of Kim. But I mean, even as a fan, I know all of you, the cast and crew, writers, everybody are fans of the show as much as you are employed by the show. You're probably waiting to see what's going to happen too, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we don't. I mean, we want to know.
Yeah.
We're invested. We want to know, and we want it. But I think we're invested in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Perhaps because we are trying to want to make sure that it's a satisfying journey for the character.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that whatever that ending is, that it makes sense and it pays respect to everything that's kind of come before.
Yeah.
So that's a different set. That's a different task than just, what happens to her. It's like, how do we make sure that what happens to her and where she's going and what she's doing fits.
Yeah. Well, everything that
we want to make sure that we do it. So.
Yep. It's like everything she's contributed. I get it totally. She's brought so much to the table and been such a leading character that you don't want it to be like a Charlie Sheen, Charlie Harper being pushed in front of a subway train to write off the character and gone. It's got to be, she might just go off into the sunset, but it's got to be for a reason, but yeah.
There's so many ways. You do, it's whatever happens to her. We just want to make sure that we're like, all right, that's the thing that you go, yeah, that makes sense. That's the journey that character's been on. That's the journey that we've been charting the journey of Jimmy McGill, and we want to know that those stories kind of make sense.
Yeah, and it meant something along the way. Here's the very last question for the evening, and I really appreciate everyone's questions tonight. You're always the best in the chat. It's phenomenal. So Mao has a question: have you come across any YouTube videos or podcasts analyzing Better Call Saul? And if so, have they served as thought material for your views on certain elements of the show? Because there's a lot of great theories out there. Some theories, I think, sometimes it's surprised some of the writers. Do you watch any of that stuff? No.
I try to stay away. It's all great, and I've seen stuff for other shows that fan theories kind of percolate out, and they're very interesting. And I'm always it's such a great thing because it's like that's what kind of the best version of like criticism is you're like looking at it and you're engaged and you're trying to figure out how it fits together and you're trying to figure out where it's going and what it's doing, and that's great, and I love that, and I love that people are engaged enough to think about these things and to bring their own creativity to it, which I think that's what it is. It's bringing their own creativity to these stories. That said, I don't want their creativity to it's hard enough for us to kind of be clear on kind of what we're doing and what we want. So we do, obviously there's certain things that just like, they get loud. And so we hear them because people interact with us in various forms, but hopefully it doesn't feel like I'm not trying to disrespect people.
Oh, no, we know that.
Just trying to say, personally, I feel like I would be too swayed because I feel like then I would be taking up the charge of somebody else's idea, or I would be trying to refute somebody else's idea. Either way, I'm just like, you know what, let those ideas be where they are, and hopefully we're aware enough of the impulse behind them that we are trying to address them. I
get it 100%. And it's obviously because I'm a musician, I always give a music analogy, but maybe you'll appreciate this or it might make sense. In the music world, I know a lot of professional recording musicians, like, international touring artists, recording artists. And, sometimes they're getting ready to record. They're doing pre-production. And you might say, hey, I want to show you this guitar riff I got. And they're like, no, please don't send me anything. And there's a reason for it. They don't want to be like, they first of all, maybe they might like it. Maybe they hate it, but they don't want outside influence sometimes, and it can be a distraction as much as we would all love it. I'm sure you'd love the fan theories, but sometimes you need to just tune it out, and your vision is your vision, and with the team, with their vision. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, listen, we've done it, man. This has been 60 minutes. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've been waiting for this for a long time. It's been great. I hope you had fun as well.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you for stepping into my kitchen with me. And
you didn't even have to heat your tea up once. That's pretty good.
No.
That's good. Well, it's nice to be in your kitchen, cooking with Gordon. Yeah, there's another one. We don't need Gordon Ramsay.
Exactly.
That's right, Gordon. We'll get the real Gordon, the one that doesn't yell so much. Although I haven't known you for too long, so maybe you do yell at the odd person. But no, you're good. Awesome. Well, just before we go, just a few people I made some notes to thank as well too. Obviously, my beautiful better half Sandra Lee for running the chat efficiently as she always does. Our YouTube channel members, we've just rolled it out now. You can hit youtube.com/musicgearnetwork/join. You can join the team right now. All kinds of cool stuff. We have Patreon supporters. Thank you so very much. Our moderators, our YouTube subscribers, our super chatters, our PayPal donators, and those that purchase our merch from the Broad Stash Boutique. Something that I'm not worthy of saying anymore because Gordon has a better mustache than me. So thank you so all very much. And we've run out of Fridays for 2020. So we're opening up a few Wednesday nights. So next Wednesday, we have James Austin Johnson to the program, obviously Fred from Travel Wire. And he's doing the Scooby Don impressions, quite Donald Trump impressions. Pretty darn good, pretty darn viral right now. And we're going back to writers again, too, next week on Friday night, a week from tonight. Heather Marion's here. So we're looking forward to having her. We're going to continue on. Check out our Instagram at instagram.com/inside the Gilliverse. And it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll keep in touch and we'll try to do this again maybe mid-spring or actually maybe towards the summer of next year where you guys hopefully will be into it and we'll see where you are and give us some updates.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
It's been great. Don't go away. I'll say goodbye to you off the air. Everyone, thanks so much. Have a safe weekend out there. Please be very, very safe. It is getting bad out there. And the safer we are and adhere to what some people are telling us, it would be good. We'll all get back to work safe soon. And Better Call Saul will be filming sooner than later as well, too. We'll see you next week. And until then, cheers.
Thanks again for tuning into Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent. Be sure to check back each week for more great discussions and interviews with cast and crew from Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.